In a small valley surrounded by tall, silent mountains, lived a young gardener who believed that progress must always be visible. He measured effort by results and results by speed. If something did not change quickly, he assumed it would never change at all. One early spring morning, he visited the village market where an old wanderer sold rare seeds. Tiny, pale, and almost weightless, the wanderer claimed they grew into trees that lived for centuries. Trees that stood strong through storms and survived harsh winters with grace. The gardener bought one seed, imagining how quickly it would bloom under his care. He planted it in a shallow clay pot, watered it carefully, placed it where the sun shone longest, and checked it every hour, waiting for life to appear. Days passed, then weeks, but the soil remained still, dark, and unchanged. The gardener grew restless. He whispered doubts to himself. Maybe the seed is dead. Maybe I planted it wrong. Maybe nothing is happening at all. His mind grew louder than the silence of the soil. One afternoon, when frustration pushed him close to throwing the pot away, the village's old monk happened to pass by. He watched the gardener hovering anxiously beside the pot. Without a word, the monk sat beside him. He placed his palms on the ground, closed his eyes, and simply breathed slow, deep, unhurried breaths. He stayed still long enough for the wind to slow down, long enough for the flies to vanish, long enough for the world to match his pace. The gardener waited, confused. Finally, the monk opened his eyes and said softly, "Sit with it. Every morning, before the sun rises. Do nothing. Say nothing. Simply be present. Growth is not always loud." The gardener did not understand, but he obeyed. So the next morning, while the sky was still blue-gray and the village slept, he sat beside the pot. No checking the soil, no digging for signs, no rushing the unseen. He listened to the water dripping from the roof. He watched the fog rolling slowly between the houses. He felt the cold earth beneath him, and for the first time, he realized the world around him had a rhythm he had never noticed. A slow, gentle rhythm that did not rush, did not force, did not demand. He returned the next morning, and the next, and the next. The seeds still didn't sprout, but something else began to grow, something inside him. His breath softened, his thoughts quieted, his impatience loosened, like a knot slowly coming undone. Weeks later, during one silent morning, he noticed something he had missed before. The soil was slightly raised, barely, but undeniably rising. Not enough for excitement, just enough for hope. It was then he realized the truth. The seed had been growing all along, just not where his eyes could see. Its roots had pushed downward, claiming the unseen earth. It had strengthened itself in silence, in darkness, preparing for the world above. And suddenly the gardener understood. Growth begins long before it becomes visible. 2 months later, the first tiny green sprout broke the surface. Small, fragile, almost shy. But to the gardener, it was more beautiful than any flower he had ever seen, because he had learned to wait for it without forcing it into existence. By the end of summer, it had grown into a young sapling, thin but steady, small but unshakable. One evening, the monk visited again. The gardener bowed gratefully and whispered, "I finally understand. Growth needs time." But the monk smiled and shook his head. "No," he said gently. "Growth needs patience. Time passes on its own. Patience is what teaches you to live while waiting." That night, as the moonlight touched the small tree, the gardener finally felt something he had never felt before. Quiet, clear peace. The kind of peace that comes not from control, not from speed, not from certainty, but from trusting that not everything blooms where we can see it, and not everything grows on our schedule. Some things, the most important things, grow in silence first.